Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this month's Caring for the Caregiver virtual support group presented by Community Hospice and Sutter Health. We are so happy to have you join us today. Today we have a special guest speaker who will be discussing preparing for the end, what survivors face after death. And our speaker today is Kristi AhYou. Kristi is the managing partner of Franklin & Downs. Kristi is married to Bart AhYou, and together they have 6 adult children and 2 grandchildren. Kristi is a lifelong resident of Modesto and considers Modesto to be her home. Bart and Kristi enjoy spending time with family and friends, attending Redeemer Church in downtown Modesto and community groups, traveling and living an active, healthy lifestyle. Kristi accepted the position as managing partner of Franklin & Downs Funeral Homes in November of 2011. Kristi graduated from the San Francisco College of Mortuary Science and received an associate's degree in mortuary science, and later earned a bachelor's degree in business management and completed coursework towards a master's in forensics. She considers it an honor to be in a position of serving others and providing quality servant leadership to her team and our community. Please join me in welcoming Kristi.
I just first want to thank you so much for inviting me to share the knowledge that I have after being involved in, I don't know how to say it, but all things related to death. I started my career with the Stanislaus County Coroner's Office. And then after about 13 years or so, I moved on to this role. And now I've been working with families and responding to different sorts of things in our community for 25 years. And it has been an honor to serve in that capacity in our community. So when I received the request to talk with all of you about preparing for the end in mind and what survivors face after death, I'm happy to share with you, my experience and what I know to be true and what works. So I'll go ahead and move on from here and to the next slide and just talk about one of the biggest things, one of the biggest words that matter is the word communication. And obviously the single biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it has actually taken place. I've had many families over the years come to me and say, everything is all taken care of. Dad said just to call the VA and they'll take it from there. Or maybe they purchased a plot, a cemetery, but no one can find the paperwork. They're not sure what the name of the funeral home or the cemetery is. And so there's a lot more involved, which I'm sure many of you are quite aware, to communication and making sure that the wishes have been shared with the family and that the family is prepared to act on those wishes. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about this is preparing with the end in mind. And ultimately, communication does relieve family members of making very personal end-of-life decisions at the time of need. That is a very stressful time. Sometimes the death is expected, sometimes it's not. And to begin to make those decisions and then figure out the financial aspect, the paperwork, the insurance, it can be quite stressful. And I can tell you, in the last year, I had an experience, and I really thought I knew my stuff after 25 years of experience. But when I lost my son of 29 years of age, combat veteran, my world was rocked. And even though I had a wealth of knowledge and resources available to me, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And so I began to, at that time, see everything that I have seen for 25 years with a different set of eyes.
Yesterday, dehydration because
it looks like we have somebody logged on. Hello?
Conditions are abysmal.
And if that person could put your mic on mute, that would be terrific. So when we discuss these very important issues, remember, these are family decisions and everyone needs to be able to discuss this and get their needs out when figuring out, what the plan is. So the difference between the right words and the almost right word is the difference between lightning and a lightning bug. So if you've just joined us, you will note that I've been talking about communication. I've been talking about the recent death in my own family and 25 years of experience with working at the coroner's office and with the funeral. And this is a video I'm going to show you, and it's a little bit humorous. I don't need to show you anything that's going to depress you, but it's pretty interesting. So let's take a look.
Dude, how are we gonna pay for Dad's funeral?
I don't know. I thought he already took care of it.
Yeah, he told me that too, but I haven't seen any evidence of it. I mean, did he have any life insurance or paperwork or anything like that?
You've seen Dad's house, right? That place is a mess since Mom died. Just thinking of Mom's funeral, there was rosary and mass and graveside. Do you have any idea how much all that costs?
I have no clue how much they cost. So did Dad talk to you about money at all? He never talked to me about money. I mean, I have a student loan to pay off. I've got a kid on the way. I might have $1,000 on a credit card that I could drum up.
You know, Brian, I'm not exactly in the position to pay for this either. I'm trying to save to buy a house. I don't even have one single credit card to put this on.
Maybe do like a gravesite service or something like that. I don't know.
What? No way. We have to do full Catholic services for Dad. You know that.
I know. I'm just devastated that Dad is gone and we don't know even step one of what to do.
You ready?
Yeah, ready as I'll ever be.
Hey, let's just say a little prayer and hope that everything comes out okay.
All right.
Hi, welcome. Are you Nicole and Brian?
Yes?
I'm Kristen Jones. I'm going to be your funeral director. And I first want to say I'm sorry to hear about your father's passing. I have his file here and all of his paperwork.
Our dad had paperwork?
Certainly. After your mom passed away, he came in and took care of all of his arrangements and his final wishes.
See, I told you to have a little bit of faith.
He did have paperwork.
So the interesting thing about that little video is two of the people obviously work with Frank and Downs, but we put that together because these are experiences that we have every day, is people that are prepared and people that aren't prepared, folks that have no idea. And so that's why we put the video together. It's just a short way to kind of explain what people go through when trying to figure out what they're going to do at the last moment. So many of you know that once a death has occurred, and I'm only speaking about if your loved one or a family member or your friend that you're caring for is in community hospice, the first thing is that you have to call community hospice, and the hospice nurse will arrive and pronounce death. And when that time comes, community hospice will call your funeral director of record. And then it's important that you let the funeral home know, what time you would like to come to your residence, because it's okay for you to spend time with that person. It's okay to invite other family members to come by and to spend a little time if that's what everyone needs to do. So I'm only speaking specifically if the patient is a patient of record with community hospice. In any other situation, you might say, oh no, what do I do if the person that I'm caring for I wake up in the morning, I find them deceased. In that case, you have to call 911, and then your dispatcher will lead you through the entire process of what to do next. So it's impossible for me to share every circumstance, but that's just a brief synopsis of that. When all else fails, call 911. Many folks say, why do I even need a funeral home? What do? They don't even know. I mean, folks have no idea, or they have a lot of information. Whatever the situation is, I can just give you what I know to be true. And that is that you need to have a death certificate and you need to have a permit for either a burial or for a cremation, and to process appropriate paperwork. We get the most interesting phone calls, and what happens is families will call in and they'll ask us if their loved one has been cremated yet. And we will have just brought that person into our care maybe the evening before, and that is just not how it works. Obviously, once you do a cremation, you can't turn that process around, but we go through a specific set of paperwork, and we are expecting to receive the information from you about the personal information that goes on the death certificate. So we need everything to be spelled correctly. That information has to be accurate, because once we file the death certificate and it's all attested by the doctor, there's no going back. We can make amendments, but when people don't take the time to provide us with the correct information, or occasionally we have had typos, we'll end up with a second page document or a third. And we will do everything that we can to avoid that. And then also we want to prepare the family member that is making those arrangements for the burial or cremation, and to make final disposition arrangements, and to plan all services and contact necessary partners. We actually are event planners. I know that sounds a little strange, but that's true. We are going to call the church, make sure they're available, or the parish, the synagogue, wherever it's at. We will arrange with the pastor, the church, the cemetery. We also order flowers, a casket. We do memorial holders. That's what most funeral homes do. And we want to let you know that you are paying that place to handle all of the necessary arrangements. And the goal is to have it be as stress-free as possible for you. And I say to make sure everything is perfect, and to assist with the writing of the obituary. But it's really difficult to write an obituary when you don't know the person or the family. So we're asking that you help us with content. And so if you have something prepared, a good sit down opportunity with the person that you're caregiving for is to ask them information and maybe put one together. So I just wanted to talk to you about how do I select a funeral home, because I want to make it perfectly clear that I'm here to share my information and my experience with you. And yes, I do work at a funeral home, but this is a decision that should be made by you and your family based on your own research. And I'm going to share with you how best to do that. So the death of a loved one is undoubtedly the most traumatic experience any of us will ever encounter, unless you've prepared for it, unless you've had lots of great conversations with the person that is sick or ill. And it doesn't have to be traumatic with a little preparation. So you got to ask the right questions, comparing prices and services and making those informed decisions. A lot of times I'll receive a phone call, how much does it cost? How much does what cost? I have to have a conversation to find out what the wishes are and what the family is looking for, and all that. So you can then make arrangements that are meaningful to your family and control those costs and make sure that you are doing exactly what the family member wants and what you have chosen to do as a family. So a simple search on the internet. I mean, this is an example of a recent news article from about 3 days ago. And just to be fair, because we don't always know exactly what happened, I blacked out the place. A simple Google search, funeral homes in Pesto, or you can put mortuary in Pesto, or maybe if you are helping someone from out of town, just whatever the name in the community is, and you can look up. It'll show you exactly what their review status is, what their stars, what other funeral homes, what other people have said, other consumers. And it's funny because it says you manage this business. Anyways. And I say that you should definitely go into the reviews and read them, because even I have a couple of bad reviews on there. And the important thing is to understand, did that business respond to that review? Were they kind in the process? And just to kind of find out what is actually going on. Just it's a helpful little tool. Another thing is, once you have said, you know what, I'm going to go explore this particular business. And this is especially ahead of time. It's great to do this. But also, if you suddenly experience a death in your family that you are not expecting, this is where you start. You start by online reviews and you ask important questions. Do they have a security system? Like to what level is the funeral home going to protect your loved one? Maybe you've set some jewelry with the loved one. You just want to know that everything is secure. And also any financial information and social security. We ask all of these questions for birth certificates. So you just want to make sure that the place is being protected and that it is secure. And then another really important question is, have your employees been through any type of a background check? Do you have any citations with the state of California? Is the business on probation? Those sorts of things. And you can ask me, I tour the facility, but even better, you should just stop by and just see what's happening. And ask, where is my loved one being stored? Every funeral home handles this differently. But the question is very important. Do you own your own crematory? Have you ever cremated the wrong person? Ask questions about transportation. Is your loved one going to be transported by themselves in a vehicle, or are they going to be transported with multiple other deceased persons? And I think you probably know by asking these questions is you want to know that your loved one and their identification is being tracked the entire time. So that's why that's important. And then of course licensing, and then just go and meet the staff if you can and see if you feel comfortable, just like you would any other consumer purchase. So earlier I kind of made light of a quick little joke about maybe dad saying, oh yeah, everything's taken care of with the VA, just call the VA and they're going to handle my entire service. I can tell you that that's most certainly not how it works. So you're going to go and complete applications for all of the veterans benefits, including military honors. We do all of that at our funeral home for you, including a presidential memorial certificate that can be sent off and the actual president signs it, and a veteran memorial marker or headstone. I will tell you, when my son passed away, he's a common this happened with him last year, and they did not pay for the entire service, even though he's 100% disabled. And so I think that many folks just expect that that's how it is. But what they will take care of is you can be buried at San Joaquin Valley National Cemetery or any national cemetery, as long as certain things have happened at DD 214. We need a copy of that so we can check with the National Scheduling Office. You can do that ahead of time. This is something that you are paying your funeral home to take care of for you. I'm sorry, in the background, if you hear a siren, it's because this is on McHenry. All right. So, and then you want to confirm and coordinate any existing paid pre-planned funding benefits, which may cover any expenses deemed eligible by the administration. and then coordinate all the necessary documentation provided by family. And then we will request honors. And a good funeral home will call, double check, make sure that our local guys are going to show up and do those honors, because many of them are with the VFW or they're volunteers, and so it's always good to give them that follow-up. And then we will also coordinate with federal or state veteran cemeteries. It doesn't necessarily have to be the one here within 50 miles. So who is eligible? Military members on active duty or in the selected reserve. Active duty is a completely different story. The family would be, they would be assigned an advocate that would help them through the process. And so thankfully that hasn't happened very often here lately, but that is a completely different scenario. So former military members who served on active duty have departed under conditions other than dishonorable. If you have received or someone you have received a dishonorable discharge, it is most likely that they will not be covered. But it doesn't hurt to have your funeral home give them a call. It usually takes about 48 hours to determine eligibility or not. And then former military members who completed at least one term of enlistment or period of initial obligated service in the selected reserve, you know, like National Guard. Many folks, I think my dad was in the National Guard, he served in Watts riots or something like that, so he didn't qualify. Please let us do whatever we can as a funeral to help determine the eligibility by, you know, filing paperwork, making the call, and doing that on behalf. So,
Kristi,
yes.
I am so sorry to interrupt you. Could we please request you move a little bit closer to your microphone, please?
Oh, absolutely. I'm so sorry. If
You're fine. It was just petering off a little bit. We can hear you perfectly now. Thank you so much.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for asking me that, or advising me anyways. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. But back to the veterans benefits though, the time to find out is ahead of time if you can. So these are the documents that you should get together in preparation for making those final wishes. And that would be the Social Security number or card. We don't need the exact card, but the number is extremely important. We can file a death certificate without it. We prefer not to, because you want to link the Social Security number to the death certificate. And we do notify Social Security through fax file system so that that process can get started and linked together and, you know, just avoid chaos if you can. So we need all the personal information for the death certificate. And again, the DD-214, or if the person was in the armed services. We ask some interesting questions. We don't come up with these questions ourselves. They are asked by the Vital Statistics Department. And that is the name of the deceased person's parents. And also the maiden name of mom and what state they were born in. We will assist with insurance policy information. Not all funeral homes will take assignments. Many folks have insurance policies that are for small little incremental amounts, like for example, $2,500. Maybe the person paid on the policy for 20 years I've seen. And then when it's time to collect on the policy, it has actually been sold 3, 4, 5 times. And it's extremely difficult for us to collect on those policies. So we tend not to do the paperwork because we will end up filing paperwork and sending death certificates 3 and 4 times. So it's called an assignment, and most funeral homes will not do assignments unless there's a really good reason. So just keep that in mind in the back of your head. And know that in order to receive funds on these policies, you're going to have a certified copy of the death certificate. You're going to have to file an insurance claim. If you start all that paperwork ahead of time, it makes it even more difficult for the funeral home to now do an assignment. It creates confusion. So it's best that the family just go ahead and collect on those themselves. And then different funeral homes have different ways to accept payment, like they'll do express funding and some different things. Your funeral home can help you understand that, and they will help you with paperwork. So just to go ahead and let you know that just because there's a life insurance policy doesn't mean that it's going to be easy, because if you do not receive a death certificate for 6 to 8 weeks, it can be a hard time figuring out how to pay for funeral expenses for families sometimes. Another difficult thing is photos. If you're wanting to do a tribute video, your funeral home should be able to help you with that. They can put music with it. We have a really simple link that we send to people on their phones, and they can upload the photos, and we edit them for them, but not every funeral home does that. But to have those photos handy, like which ones do you want to actually see? Because when families start to wade through an enormous amount of photos after their loved one has passed, it's very difficult. I'm going to go ahead and say, having experienced the death of my son in the last year, it's quite agonizing, because you start going down memory lane and you start remembering all of these. It's just a hard time. So put together a good 50 to 100 photos ahead of time that you can share with your family. They can go ahead and use those for memorial folders or anything like that. Another thing is the place of birth and the date of birth. So this doesn't mean that we need to see a birth certificate with the city and the hospital or the country. We just want to know the country. We don't want to know, but we want to report a death certificate. So basically, it's just the state or the country if it's outside of the United States. And then we need a copy of joint power of attorney for healthcare. Or if you are married and your wife or husband, it's no problem whatsoever. If you have maybe half brothers and sisters, or there's multiple children in the family, all adult children, if there's not a wife or a husband, are responsible for making arrangements. And that doesn't include step. So it's really important that I tell you another time that you should have all of this in order, because it creates a lot of infighting, a lot of hard feelings, and sometimes it takes us a really long time to get through all of the emotional things that go on when making arrangements when there's a lot of parties involved. Another thing is any paperwork that you have regarding pre-arrangements and or cemetery property, so you can call and verify, see if there's any funds owed, and just kind of go from there. I feel like I'm just going on and on. How long have I been talking so far? I don't know. It's okay. But another thing is burial or cremation. Families come to us and they have no idea what they want to do. No one has had a conversation about whether to be buried or cremated. And they're just at a loss, and they're at a loss about viewing. And believe me, when I share this with you, I am sharing thousands of different scenarios that I have been through with helping families come to these decisions. And it can be quite difficult to decide. And I'm just going to tell you, if this happens to you and you have no idea what to do, there is no reason to make a decision right away. I have families who their loved one was transported via ambulance. They arrive at the hospital, the person is pronounced deceased, and an hour later, they are knocking on the funeral home door. And I say, no, you need to go talk with your family. You need to take a moment to catch your breath. Or possibly they've been up all night, and they need to you just need to be well rested, have some food, and take a moment to reflect on what everyone's needs are in this situation. Many times families will say, well, Dad always said he wanted to be cremated, but maybe he died suddenly in a motor vehicle accident, and there are family members that want to see him. And it's just, that's why I say it's important to sit down with family and decide, because if decisions are made in haste and people do not get what they need during that process, hard feelings it's definitely going to happen. And so it's just best to be a little on the patient side with folks when they're grieving. All right, and I'm telling you this because, again, when my son died, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I thought, who am I? I've been doing this for 25 years and I don't know what I want to do. So it's a hard decision. So I gave myself that time to ask around and talk to the family and decide what the best decision was. So if cremation is the option of choice, then you'll want to make that decision as to whether the cremated remains will be placed in a mausoleum niche, buried in cemetery grounds. Sometimes they're taken home or scattered. I have families that they know that they want to place their loved one in the cemetery at some point, but they just want the cremated remains to come home with them for a time. And I just, in this role that I'm in, it's just important to be respectful and patient and kind and let people do what they need to do to get through whatever scenario they're going through. So there's options available every time with cremation and or burial. So you just need to consider the urn, or if the urn is going to be present at the funeral. Somebody can't pass away on a Monday and then you have an appointment. You're just not, the person's probably not going to be cremated or returned to you for a service on Friday. It takes a little bit more time than that. It can happen rather quickly if it's necessary, but given the amount of deaths in our community and nationwide, things are taking a lot longer than usual. So if viewing or services are a consideration, those can happen with a cremation or a burial. It doesn't matter what your choice is. So nice options to consider is how you're going to celebrate that person in their life. And it can be at home, it could be in a church, it could be in a restaurant, it could be anywhere you want it to be. But some things to consider is gathering the photos and make sure that you have photos to share with your family. Many people don't like to have their photos taken. And so I'll ask that question and there's maybe 1 or 2 or 3. Obviously you don't want to do a video with that. But the quality of the photos is important. And it is important to have a good, high quality photo taken to share as a legacy with your family. One thing that I always recommend is if you know that you are sick, you know you're ill, you have a terminal illness, you are going through a lot, but if you can take the time to write a personal note that can be read at the service or after your death, then, or to read privately, those are wonderful opportunities to send a message with your loved one. But I am going to say if you have 4 or 5 kids, you need to write 1 to each child. So, and then you can take time to make a video. You could just make a simple video like we're doing right now on a computer, and you can share your life story. You could share a poem, a song, maybe if you play any sort of a musical instrument, and this could be played at your service. These sorts of actions are the type of planning it helps people grieve so much when people take the time to consider these options. So I just hope that you take the time to consider doing that. Other things like when you meet with your funeral director, they're going to ask you all kinds of questions, and they'll offer you options. Obviously, there's a cost with everything, but a dove release is nice. I did service for a lady. She's 92 years old, and her family wanted to release 92 doves, and it was just beautiful. But you need to use a company that has trained doves, and they are. You just don't want to go. I've had people do this before. They'll go to the flea market and buy a big thing of doves, and then think they're going to release them and they're going to fly around and it's going to be great. And it just, everything that you do, it just needs to be someone that knows what they're doing. And I was looking for pictures yesterday. Like, we're so busy working and doing things that we don't always take a picture of everything that we do. But this person's last name was Stone. And so instead of doing like the traditional signing book, we had people leave notes on rocks, and it was just kind of a neat thing. And then they could put all of the rocks together and just have them always to take a look at and reflect. It was just kind of a nice touch. Another thing is, you just don't want to just set an urn at the front of the chapel. You want to add some layers of fabric and, whatever the family brings to you. Like, one time I did service for a bowler, and one of those 300 guys that always got the 300 score or whatever. And so I got there was 4 kids, so we received bowling pins, and everyone signed their name on one, and one of those was given to each child. But it's just important that you share the person's life story with us so that we can help come up with cool and original ideas. So this is me. I'm just going to crack a joke right now. On days when I do my hair and makeup and all that, that's a professional photo. But this is my name. If you should have any questions, or you just later after you watch this and you just want to ask a question, just send me an email and I will send you a thoughtful response and an answer. So at this time, I just want to see if there's any questions in the audience that I can answer.
If you have any questions, feel free to add them to the chat. Thank you so much, Kristi. We are getting a lot of positive thank yous and great information. Everything, your presentation was so thoughtful. We can tell that you put a lot of thought into it and a lot of, kindness and love. It was very thorough, so I don't know that we'll have many questions.
All right. I will tell you, just kind of in closing, having investigated cause and manner of death for 13 years or so, and then working in this capacity, I had said earlier, my son passed away, and I thought I knew everything. And so when it was time to select a cemetery, I showed up at these cemeteries with a completely different set of eyes. So if you have the time to go visit the different cemeteries and think about where you want to place your loved one, so important to make sure that you have selected a funeral director ahead of time, what cemetery you want to use. And I did see in the chat, someone says that this is so overwhelming. 25 years of experience, overwhelmed it was exactly how I felt.
Yes, thank you so much. And yes, the person noted that it is so important and less stressful to have some advanced planning. And so we're so grateful to you. And thank you everyone who joined us for this morning's chat. We thank you for joining us. We invite you to join us next month on April 14th, where we will talk about dementia versus normal aging. So we hope that you're able to join us then. And once again, thank you, Kristi, and thank you to everyone who joined us today. Have a great day, be safe, and stay well.
Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.